After a boring 2-0 loss to Calgary, the Nashville Predators bounce back to get the W in Vancouver. On today's Locked On Predators, we're going to tell you what we've learned about this team on the road, and we're going to share some noteworthy milestones from Sunday night's game.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this? Yeah, that's right. You feel it. It is Monday episode, welcoming any first-time listeners, and of course, giving that hearty Monday shout out to our everydayers and especially to our great Locked On Predators insider community. I am Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, Emma and I are going to recap last night's important win over the Vancouver Canucks with our one word to describe the game. We're also going to talk about a couple of under the radar but important milestones achieved in those 60 minutes in Vancouver. We're also going to talk about some of the trends that we are seeing from the team on this recent road trip. Is there a reason to feel maybe just a titch cautiously optimistic? We're going to discuss that. But before we dive into it, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. All right, Emma, it feels like it's been eons and light years since we've come on here to talk about, kind of a big win, big relative term in the 19 game span we've had. Descriptions have shifted the beginning of this season for terms such as big and exciting, but Predators coming off of what can only be described as a lackluster snooze fest of a game in Calgary, play Vancouver. This was a matchup from the postseason last year, and come away with a 5-3 win. It felt a little more gastrointestinally close than 5-3 for much of that game, but the Predators get the win. Let's kick off our discussion of everything we saw with one word to describe the game, Emma, and I'm going to let you kick us off. And remember, folks who are listening, we say it's one word, but Emma and I make the rules, Emma and I break the rules. So it could be a whole paragraph, Emma. We're fine.
I think I'm going to go with two words again, and it's sort of reminiscent to what we talked about on the show last week. I think I mentioned after the basically identical losses, the back-to-back overtime losses, it seemed very I don't know. It just was, I think I mentioned that this team has a second period problem. So my two words / one word for Sunday night, second period. They actually showed up. They showed up in the second period. And yes, it was great. It was good to see, Zach L'Heureux get them on the board in the first with his first NHL goal. Definitely well-deserved. He had been working extremely hard for that, and it was a really nice one. I think that was good. Of course, we saw some, familiar demons come back when they did end up, allowing Vancouver to come back and tie it pretty quickly after that first goal. So that's what kind of makes me think, all right, we're not entirely out of the woods here. We've still got some things to work on. But if you look at the game as a whole, second period starts again, Vancouver scores to take the lead, but then Steven Stamkos on the power play. Welcome. Steven Stamkos twice on the power play. Roman Josi at 5-on-5. I mean, finally, it's like, okay, all right, we're getting in a groove here. And this is the first time, I would say, the first time in a while it felt like that they had actually built a comfortable lead. And then it was suddenly not so comfortable when former Predator Kiefer Sherwood scored in the third period to cut it to a 1-goal lead. But then, of course, Gus Nyquist was able to score the empty netter, and he's just the empty net king right now, I guess.
Yep.
And then, so that was able, that's why the final score was a little bit more lopsided. But yeah, it was good to see them actually kind of not only, the second period, it felt like Nashville really dictated the pace, which is something we hadn't seen in a second period in a while. But they were able to, they had been sort of snake bit on the power play for a couple games. So they were able to get a couple on the power play, which is huge. They, finished perfect 2-for-2 on the power play against Vancouver, which is really, really positive to see. But then I think there's also in the third period, credit to Vancouver, because they really came out and just poured on the pressure in the third period. And I was very impressed. Now, it was, while you think it's a little kind of a red flag that it wasn't until like 18 minutes or so into the third period that the Predators got a shot on goal. You don't love to see that. That's not great. But for a team for whom team defense has been an issue, and with the amount of pressure that Vancouver was applying in that third period and how hard they came out, I was very impressed with Nashville's team defense in the third, that they were able to weather that storm. Yes, they gave up the goal to Kiefer Sherwood, but overall, I think, it was a more impressive, complete effort. But again, to go back to my original 2 words, second period, because finally, where's that been?
Where has that been? We've been playing them in all these other 18 games before. I just think maybe the team just finally caught on. Oh, wait, there's this 20 minutes in between the first and last where we can do things. Yeah, that third period was interesting. It really was, in many ways, all Vancouver. I agree with you, though, about the team defense. They were able to sort of bend, not break, and they limited shots to only 6, and Vancouver had a lot of offensive zone possession time. So Nashville, I think, did do a good job sort of withstanding everything that Vancouver was throwing at them. My one word, I don't even know how many words it is because it's Monday morning and I'm not a mather, but my one word for kind of this weekend of games is Dr. Office TV to Little House on the Prairie TV. Because that game in Calgary felt like doctor's office TV, where you're sitting in the doctor's office and it's like there's a news show on and they're telling you a story. But at the end of the story, you realize it's an advertisement for some sort of drug. And you're like, okay, that wasn't A, that interesting, and B, you're trying to sell me something. But I felt like the Vancouver game was a really good classic episode of Little House on the Prairie, where there's some action, you love the characters, you kind of sort of think what's going to happen. And it's quality. It's quality. Little House on the Prairie is quality TV, everyone. And that's a hill I will die on. It was not quite Lord of the Rings, and we're waiting for the Lord of the Rings game. But we got some Little House on the Prairie game in Vancouver, and I think that that's not nothing, considering how this team has struggled in the first 18 games of the season. Of course, we always check in with our insiders. Chris's one word is bounce, and I love his explanation. He said all season, in most instances, the random bounces have gone the way of the opposition. Last night, even though they were outshot, the bounces went the Predators' way. L'Heureux happened to be in the right spot for the blind backward pass. Stamkos' 2 laser shots went perfectly over the shoulder under the bar instead of bouncing off the post or crossbar. Bounces tend to even out over the year. Maybe a few more games will go the Preds' way. And I could not agree with Chris more. It feels like there are lots of specific things Nashville needs to correct, but it feels like part of their struggle early is the bounces aren't going their way. And last night, I feel like you could see that they did. Of course, we talked about it. Zachary L'Heureux got his first NHL goal. And let me just tell you, I'm not going to lie. I was just a little bit giddy about that. 21 years old, has come into the NHL, and he has not blinked. He just still is playing Zachary L'Heureux hockey. Steven Stamkos, 2 power play goals. Of course, we also saw Roman Josi score. Gus Nyquist get the empty net goal. So I think this was a solid effort by the Nashville Predators in a game that really felt like, dear God, you've got to start winning. So, it was a good little House on the Prairie episode, maybe a two-parter, like a good cliffhanger two-parter.
Yeah, there were some good things, there were some bad things, there was some drama along the way, but they were able to get it done. And I think that, it was good to see the band back together on that top line again. It was good to see them. I think that, it was good to see Tommy Novak back in there as well. L'Heureux, you mentioned, I think has been, like I said, been working exceptionally hard for that first goal, and he's had some really good chances as well. So it's good to see him, kind of get one there. And we've talked about this with Andrew Brunette tends to have a shorter leash for younger players, and I think that the more that he can just keep playing his game and now producing as well, I think we're going to start his leash start to get a little bit longer here.
Yeah, I agree. Coming up, we want to talk about a couple of under the radar milestones of note in this game against Vancouver. We'll tell you what they are in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It's not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the Prize Picks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. Look, we know the Predators rely on Roman Josi to get the team going offensively. Why not go with a more pick when it comes to Josi points this week? Download the Prize Picks app today, and you can use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So check out all the action at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Emma, we talked last week on our show about some upcoming milestones for some of the Nashville Predators players. And so I do want to take a moment and acknowledge one that was achieved last night in Vancouver, and that was Roman Josi with his goal, scored his 700th career point. And it was so great to see that goal, not just to kind of keep the Predators building momentum offensively, but Roman Josi has struggled a little bit, I think, offensively when it comes to this season. And look, people with short memory, let's remember the same thing happened out of the gate last season. Ended up a Norris Trophy finalist. Now, I don't know that we're going to speak that into existence this season, but it's been a little bit of a slower start for Yost. So to see him get that goal was great. And also, what a shot from Roman Josi on that goal. Dear God.
Yeah. And I think too, you mentioned that's exactly what I was going to say about he got off to a slower start last year, but even slow start, you have to put that into context when it's Roman, because he just does so many things so well, and we just come to expect this elite level of production out of him. And what's crazy to think is, like, you think about, well, A, he hasn't been scoring goals, and B, the team hasn't been winning. So those things in your head equal out to he has had a slow start. But if you look at it, he has 6 points in his last 6 games. I mean, so he has been a factor in these games. Obviously, he hasn't quite shown the ability. And I've talked about this before, that he's one of those players that has that very unique ability to really just take over games and really just put the entire team on his back and just say, I'm going, who's with me? And so I think we haven't yet seen that from him, which is what we expect from him. But again, it's almost kind of a luxury to have a player who can do that. And so slow start, quote unquote, for Josi is really not like anything to be concerned about, and would not be considered slow for a lot of other people. But I think that he He's definitely been a factor offensively. And I will say, speaking of Roman Josi, it's very nice. I feel like we're finally seeing he and Brady Shea are starting to find the catch up together,
Yes.
which is very, very good to see. And not trying to say I told you so, but like I told y'all so, because Brady Shea is coming from a very different system in Carolina, and he essentially had one defensive partner for like the last 4 years. Like
Right.
it was him and Brett Pesce, and Brett Pesce is a very different player than Roman Josi. And so you have to take that into account. And it's like, just give him a minute. He'll get there. Just give him a minute. And they're finally starting to get there. So it's good to see.
Brett Pesce, Roman Josi. One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
And it's not just facial hair. There's a couple other things that are different there. Also want to shout out Steven Stamkos. Emma, you talked about like 2 power play goals. We just saw that chef's kiss. Steven Stamkos scored his 218th and 219th power play goals, which means he passed Jaromir Jagr and Mike Gartner for 11th all-time in NHL history with that 218th power play goal. That's just incredible. That's really an incredible stat. I also have to tell you, as a little aside, every time I see anything about Jaromir Jagr, I think about the fact that on my honeymoon in Las Vegas at 5 a.m., we saw him sitting and playing Baccarat at the MGM Grand.
That is very unsurprising, to be quite honest with you. But
we were like, wait a minute, we know him. And it was like empty. We were going to the breakfast buffet. Let's keep it real here, folks. It wasn't like we had stayed up all night.
Right.
He had.
Yes.
At the MGM Grand, just so you know. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Another interesting stat, and I'm almost embarrassed at how much time I spent collecting these numbers, because I'm sure somebody has done it somewhere on the interwebs. But this was Nashville's first time that they have scored 3 goals in one period so far this season. Last season, they had 19 games where they scored at least one period of 3 or more goals in a game. 3 of those games had 2 periods with 3 or more goals in them. Out of those 19 games, Nashville won 14. So newsflash, scoring a lot of goals helps you win games.
Big if true.
Yeah, like breaking news, huge. So that second period that you talked about, Emma, that was big for Nashville because they have not been able to score 3 goals in a period so far this season. That's something the Predators have got to fix.
Well, and they have not even just that, but they haven't been able to build on a lead, it seems like. It's like, or hold on to a lead. It's like, if anything, they'll get a 1-goal lead. Oh, they tied it up.
Yeah.
And then it's like they never get this comfortable cushion of having a 2-goal lead, most dangerous lead in sports. But I think that in this case, it was like, okay, they needed that. And because it was like the first time I felt like, in a while watching this team where you could kind of like exhale, like
a little bit,
like while you were watching them. Not just because of the score, but because of how they were playing. Again, like really, really impressed with the team defense in the third. Would like to see a little bit more balance of defense and offense. Like, guys, it's not football. We can play both. We should play both.
You can swap really quickly.
Yeah, like it's we'd like to see you do both, preferably in the same period. Whereas, second period was all offense and then the third period was all defense. It's like, okay, fine. But like a little bit more blending together there.
But up, guys.
Yeah, but it was really good to see, especially coming off of the loss in Calgary. Just every loss at this point is gonna feel deflating, but that one in particular, it just, coming off of a shutout, shutout loss to, good for Dustin Wolf. He looked great, but like a 23-year-old goalie with like 20 some games of NHL experience, like you like to think that, you could could have challenged him a little bit more. But no, I think that it was good, even just to see L'Heureux get the Predators on the board first in that game after coming off of a shutout was huge, as far as, a momentum swing for this team.
Yeah, L'Heureux is an energy guy, I think, to begin with. But to get that first NHL goal was really the shot in the arm, I think, that really propelled Nashville another step forward in this game. And here's what's real. They had to play a step forward against Vancouver, even though Vancouver did not have Brock Besser, which is huge. That's a huge loss for Vancouver and an advantage for Nashville. But Nashville really needed to play a level up. And I do think that L'Heureux goal definitely helped. Coming up, we're going to tell you about the most interesting, exciting milestone in the Western Conference that the Predators hit after last night's game. And we're going to tell you what we see improving from this team. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Just like your favorite sports team, we are all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Once again, check it out at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Emma, one other milestone that I think we just need to take a moment and celebrate / acknowledge, because it's a little something. Nashville is no longer the worst team in the Western Conference, ladies and gentlemen. I mean,
we'll take the victories where we can, y'all.
That is not a sentence that I thought I would say back on July 2nd, but here we are. Yeah. Nashville finished last night. They have 15 points. The Ducks and the Sharks have 14 points in the Western Conference, and Chicago has 13 points. Now, Nashville absolutely needs to push for points. Like, we are really there already in the season. They need to leapfrog St. Louis and Utah, who have 17 points. We're going to see what they can do. They play again in Seattle on Wednesday to wrap up this Western Conference road trip. So did want to give a shout out to Nashville, who are no longer the absolute bottom feeders of the Western Conference.
But maybe let's aim a little higher, guys.
Woo! Yikes.
You got to start somewhere. But yeah, no, I think that no one thought this was a last place team. No one thought that. And it was only a matter of time. They do need to leapfrog St. Louis and Utah, and I think they easily can. I don't think they're ever catching Dallas or Winnipeg, but Colorado, we'll see. I mean, Minnesota, are they gonna, are they
real?
Are they starting to come back down to earth? Hey, Winnipeg has lost 2 games in a row, so they're just on their spiral now. But I think that, the things are evening out now, that like Nashville Predators might be on the upswing. I'll believe it when they can string together multiple wins. Let's start there. But you can't have multiple until you have one, and they got one against Vancouver, which was really big. I think obviously the last time they faced Seattle was at home. It was one of the first games of the season, and it was not good.
Brutal.
And so I think that this will be a really good kind of measuring stick for this team, to face them on Wednesday and see
For
if they really
anybody
have gotten better.
For anybody in Winnipeg that's panicking because you lost 2 games in a row, the Nashville Predators in October would like you to hold their beer.
Yeah.
Because we can do way better than 2 losses in a row. Thank you kindly.
Yeah.
Talking about this team on this road trip, of course, 2 overtime losses, that loss in Calgary, but a win last night in Vancouver. Emma, when you look at this team, do you think they're getting better? And if so, in what ways are you hopeful that they are making strides?
Yes, I think they are getting better. But I it's like you see moments of them getting better, but it's not consistent. And so
Yes.
that's what I need to see is a little bit more consistency. But in terms of, I think if you just look at the Vancouver game alone, special teams are still, special teams have kind of been the saving grace of this team, which is crazy to think after last year. But not a lot of penalties in the Vancouver game, but they were able to capitalize on both power play opportunities they had. They did give up a power play goal to Vancouver, but that penalty kill overall has been tremendous. I think goaltending, I mean, Saros has had a very good start to the year. Scott Wedgwood is getting better. He has gotten better each time we've seen him, and that's really positive to see. I mentioned Brady Shea looking like he's finally starting to figure it out defensively. And the team defense as a whole had very much been an issue for this team early on. And just a lot of miscommunication, miscues. It looked at, we talked about it, looked like these guys have never met each other before. And now they're looking more comfortable together and they're looking a lot more connected. So we're seeing that in terms of the team defense, but I would now like to see that start to translate a little bit more on the offense. And we've talked about it. Yes, and I know no one wants to hear it, that like, hey, you know what? Sometimes the puck luck just doesn't go your way. The bounces don't go your way. You get unlucky. It happens. And that is true, but I understand that people really don't want to hear that when this team has had the start that it has, which is totally understandable. I'm not blaming the bad start completely on puck luck.
Right.
That would not be correct at all to say. But there have been some things where it's like, good Lord, seriously? Like another post, really? And so I think that once they start to get a little bit more settled and comfortable with each other, like I would feel a little bit better if the offense started to really pick up. The defense is getting better, but I would like to see the offense start to really improve.
I agree. And I think there are a couple of players that we really want to see step into that. We saw the return of Tommy Novak last night. Tommy Novak, I think, is somebody that Predators fans were like, hey, this is your season. Like, this is the time we want to see you take that next step. And Novak's been a late bloomer, so I don't feel like it was impossible. We just haven't seen it yet. Really want to see Evangelista get going too. We know he's got that offensive upside. We just haven't quite seen it yet. I want to give a shout out to the fourth line. Because let's be real, the fourth line did not start the season the same with Sherwood gone. And gosh, has it been a struggle. Michael McCarron was a healthy scratch at times. They have just not been that identity line that we've seen. This road trip, they're starting to figure it out. We've seen Smith, McCarron, and now L'Heureux. All three have been scoring. I feel like last night's game in Vancouver was the first time we saw the fourth line doing that, just gnat in your ear, incessant pester puck hunting that we haven't quite seen them get to yet this season. And so I feel like, okay, now it's starting to look a little more familiar, even if there is a new face on that line. So I do want to shout out the fourth line. Nowhere to go but up. It was tough out of the gate for those guys, but I feel like, okay, maybe we're seeing it. Also, again, Steven Stamkos getting comfortable. And look, Emma and I don't want to be this girl, but I'm 100% going to be this girl. We told you We told you all it was going to take him time because he's still looking for the ketchup at Trader Joe's.
Or see, I want to be that girl. I will absolutely remember the time I was right. Yeah, that's me. I will gladly be that person. There are a few things in this life that I love more than being right. And probably says a lot about who I am as a person. But yes, and I think we're starting to see that. We're starting to see it with him. We're starting to see it with Shea as well.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, not to be negative, I do think that Jonathan Marchessault has taken a step back.
And he's trying so hard. You can see how hard he is trying, but it's not there yet, man.
And that's almost like what I feel like the problem is. And again, I'm not saying like just don't try, but like you can see the frustration with himself. And I think that that's getting in the way. You know, he had a couple games in a row with like bad turnovers that led directly to a goal for the opponent. It's just been, you know, it's been a little rocky for him here lately, but I think that, you know, we're still like starting to see other guys step up. I would just like to see it a little bit more consistently. Like I will say I was so happy, and this is not anti Phil Tomasino at all. This is 100% pro Juuso Parssinen. I was so happy to see that he was still in the lineup. When, you know, Tommy Novak came back, obviously they were going to have to scratch someone. And, you know, more often than not, you would think it would be Juuso Parssinen, but I really liked that Andrew Brunette rewarded him because he has looked so good in this last stretch of games here, even though the team hadn't been winning. Parssinen had been playing really, really well. And it was really, really good to see him still in the lineup. And that's, you know, the beauty of a player like that is he obviously was playing center while Novak was out. Novak comes back, you can shift Parssinen over to the wing and he can still make an impact. So that was good to see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was a good choice. I think it was good to see Andrew Brunette reward Juuso Parssinen because, again, that's one of those short leash players that we've talked about. I will say this. Ooh, Juuso Parssinen, you had better buy Juuse Saros a really high quality Finnish craft beer. Like, don't give him an open can of Pabst like the kid from the West Wing who learned how to vote the first time. Because bless his heart, Juuso Parssinen made a no-look pass in the defensive zone that went right to an open guy in the slot. And Juuse Saros made the save because Juuse Saros is cool. But let's all agree that Parssinen is buying a really fancy Finnish craft beer for Juuse Saros, which I think, you know, even Steven, it's like nothing ever happened. Interesting week this week for the Predators. Emma, only have 2 games, Seattle on Wednesday, Winnipeg at home on Saturday. That should be great. The upside is this gives Emma and I some time this week to do some deep dives on early season stats, to look a little closer at some player performances. So that is what is going to be coming up at Locked On Predators this week. So make sure you tune in each and every day. And we're going to talk some more Nashville Predators hockey. Before we sign off today, though, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio. You can fortunately not find Emma and I in prison, where we both considered going when we saw Connor Garland put his hands on Mark Del Gaiso. Check yourself, young Connor Garland. Not today, Satan.
We were both about to go to prison for that.
100%. Wouldn't have complained about the food once. Would have slept on the lumpy mattress. No regrets.
Yep. Worth it.
Worth it. Absolutely.
No one touches Mark Del Gaiso.
Not today, Satan. Probably not even tomorrow. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Predators / Locked On Mark Del Gaiso. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We hope you all have a great Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow.